What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers are down at the Senior Bowl. We have some updates from down there. Meanwhile, Pete Carroll. He was very open and honest and probably gave a little bit too much away and saying too little, I would have to admit, on the Russell Wilson rumors. Meanwhile, one former quarterback believes the Pittsburgh Steelers should make a massive trade for a potential future Hall of Famer. And Mike Florio is just coming up with some wild thoughts that we're going to dive into here in a little while. Nick, it's a beautiful one today in the Berg. It is windy as all hell. It is like a living hurricane in the city of Pittsburgh today. If you walk outside, you better be wearing some shoes, some heavy ones, because you get whoop right away. How you feel, my friend? Is it just as crazy down there in the good old DMV?
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was thinking, oh, wow, I have heard the wind a lot today, but it's beautiful. I mean, 60 degrees, you got to love when you have that at the end of January. All I'll say is, if this doesn't persist, or if it is this nice over the next couple of days, that Punxsutawney Phil better watch his back, because if it's nice over the next couple of days and he comes out and he says, no, you guys got 6 more weeks, I'm going to drive to Punxsutawney, and Gus will be the first most famous groundhog in Pennsylvania after I'm done with him.
When is Groundhog's Day? Next weekend?
Sunday.
Next week? It's this Sunday.
This Sunday.
Wow, dude, that is brutal.
Phil better watch out.
Is Phil okay? So I've always felt like there's an argument here. I'm curious to see your thoughts, your side of this. Is Phil immortal, or are there multiple Phils?
Is that a serious question?
Yeah.
What is the average lifespan of a groundhog?
Look, I'm not saying I don't think Phil could actually predict the weather, but I'm just saying there's an argument.
I don't know
what the legend is. What the legend is.
I don't know what the legend is.
I was going to say.
I don't pay that much attention to it. All I know is every February 2nd, this little rat comes out of his hole and he says, you guys got 6 more weeks of winter, and we can all blame it on him. So, he can come out and do that again, but it is 60 degrees today. So I will know that if it gets cold again, which inevitably it will, I know who I'm blaming it on. Maybe it's fair, maybe it's not, but it's on that little rat.
I will say, and I don't know if it happened, but my family has always gone with did it snow on Russian Orthodox Christmas or Russian Christmas or whatever? If it did, we're good. If it did not, it's snowing on Easter. And you could say, that's nonsense. Pay attention to it next time. I missed it this time. Pay attention to it next time. I'm telling you, works better than a groundhog in a hole that comes out once a year and says, yo, what's good, dog? Miserable life. You think that they keep it in the cage the whole year? No. Last question, then we'll talk actual football. Or you think they go catch a new groundhog every year?
Oh, no, I think it is the same groundhog every once in a while. Like, I'm sure they keep the same groundhog there, but he's not in the stump, if that's the question. He's not chilling that stump 364 days a year and then says, yeah, I guess it's my time to work, so I guess I'll go do something.
I'll actually come out of the stump. Fantastic. I don't know. I've always had questions about good old Punxsutawney Phil. Hope he's doing okay there in the stump. Let's talk some Pittsburgh Steelers football. Down in Mobile, Alabama, where they originated, and I haven't been down there in 2 years, so it's kind of sad to say this and act like I am a constant goer, because I'm not these days. But if you go down to Mobile, what they will remind you of is not of Punxsutawney Phil. They probably don't even care nor even know who this guy is. What they do care about is that they founded Mardi Gras. You talk to anybody in Mobile, Alabama, they'll tell you Mardi Gras ain't from New Orleans. It's from Mobile, Alabama. Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers are down there the week before, and they're doing a lot. Every year, the Pittsburgh Steelers tend to kind of give away some draft insight down in Mobile. You could say whatever you want. They don't draft the guy from there. It doesn't matter. Mike Tomlin, this year it's Arthur Smith, Terrell Austin, Omar Khan. They always tend to navigate to the positions that they are targeting early in the NFL draft. They did it when they drafted Kenny Pickett, and they watched a boatload of quarterbacks. They did it when they drafted Najee Harris, and they watched a boatload of running backs. They did it when they drafted Troy Fautanu last season, and they are looked at a boatload of offensive linemen, much like they did last year or 2 years ago when they drafted Broderick Jones. Well, this year, according to good friend of ours, Nick Fairbaugh, quote, if it was not clear before, the Steelers have a lot of options at defensive line, and most of those guys were not even in Mobile. However, Austin, Mike Tomlin, and Omar Khan were zeroed in on the defensive linemen. I have no doubts about where they are looking early in this draft. The position I would bank on is defensive line. Today, things have changed, according to good old Nick Fairbaugh. Mike Tomlin isn't exclusively watching defensive linemen. He flipped between defensive linemen and wide receivers, joining Terrell Austin and Arthur Smith at either spot. Omar Khan watched defensive line yesterday, more focused on wide receivers today. I don't think any of it comes as a surprise, but more of a very positive confirmation that the Pittsburgh Steelers are targeting the positions that we all believe the Pittsburgh Steelers should be targeting right now. And they're not ignoring any of them, which is good. They've spoken to a number of running backs down there, along with wide receivers. And at this point, you got to think, okay, they believe that they can find all of these guys somewhere. So they're starting to look early in that Senior Bowl. You want to know who they're not looking at on the other side of this one? Jalen Milroe, which puts a damper on a good thought I had yesterday, one that a lot of people called me out on. And I don't think I at any point said that I believe the Pittsburgh Steelers should. I'm just saying that I thought I had it pieced together, the puzzle that said that they might. Well, it doesn't look like they're going to. He's apparently struggling down in Mobile. The Pittsburgh Steelers are spending no time watching him, Jackson Dart, or any other quarterback down at the Senior Bowl. They're focused on defensive line, wide receiver, and running back. I mean, is there a better sight to see or better words to hear at the end of January when the Pittsburgh Steelers begin their scouting trail this offseason?
I mean, if you're pro Justin Fields, I think that's exactly what you want to hear. That's music to your ears. And especially if you're somebody that didn't believe in Jalen Milroe, then this is probably confirmation. If you're somebody that did believe in Jalen Milroe, I will say this to the contrary. I'm not somebody that has put stock in or will put stock into Jalen Milroe, particularly as a first-round pick, but Bo Nix looked like crap last year at the Senior Bowl. Michael Penix looked like crap last year at the Senior Bowl. And at the end of the day, they recouped their draft stock pretty quickly because this is a long process and this is the first stop. So if you're a believer in Jalen Milroe, which I don't think there's many of them in our comment section, but if you're there and you're quiet and you're the silent minority, I will say I wouldn't sell yet. But I didn't buy in the first place, so I'll just say this is confirmation for me. As far as the Steelers and what they're doing down there, I like it. I like the fact that they're keeping an eye on running back and wide receiver, and I especially like the fact that they're keeping an eye on defensive line. I think that is becoming more and more apparent that is the likeliest course that they are going to take in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. The question becomes, who's available once it gets to them, right? I mean, if there's a couple of defensive linemen, are they more likely to go for that than the third or fourth wide receiver? Yes. But if Teteroa McMillan falls to them, maybe that changes things. If Emeka Ibuka falls to them, maybe that changes things. The point is, I think we all highlighted certain areas that we wanted them to address, and those are the areas that it looks like they're paying a lot of attention to in this first stage of the draft process, which is encouraging for guys like me and you who have sat here and said defensive line, wide receiver, running back, please and thank you in the first 3 rounds.
And that's not just what the Senior Bowl is. Like, the Senior Bowl is guys that are guys that can go throughout this draft, but the Steelers tend to look at their, like, hey, who could we find here in the early portions of the NFL draft, maybe that are sleepers. This is the beginning stages of, this is the group of guys, because that's what this is. This isn't, hey, we're picking guys from certain schools, we're going to watch these guys. This is, what does the collective look like? Is it deeper than we believed that it was? This is what we get to look at early for guys that we probably won't pay attention to later in the process. UCF has a running back down there that the Pittsburgh Steelers are apparently all in on. Well, they're not going to go to UCF's pro day. They're not going down to Florida to say, hey, we're going to go scout a running back that we might take in the 5th round. They're not going to do that. They're not going to go to TCU's pro day, but they're going to scout wide receivers and offensive linemen, or defensive linemen, at the Senior Bowl. That's what this is. And that's That's the best part, is they're highlighting, just like you said, if you're pro Justin Fields, they are highlighting the positions to fill the rest of this team. And honestly, Art Rooney said it himself. He said it in his introduction the other day. He started by saying that the running game on defense is bad and that the defensive line, or the defensive front, he called it, could use some changes. And all right, well, if the Steelers are highlighting defensive line, it seems like they're on a mission this offseason, which is awesome. You know, you could get jacked up about wide receiver, you could get jacked up about running back or quarterback, but you want to know what would be awesome? If the Pittsburgh Steelers defense was elite. That's the best football that you could ask for in the city of Pittsburgh, is when Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, not Nick Faribaugh, shout out, probably could, but isn't gonna, Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, and Keanu Benton and whoever else they bring in are absolute studs up there. That's when this is fun. It's not as fun when you're chasing poor old Jalen Milroe, man. It would have been, you know, what would have been the reaction if the tweets were all Mike Tomlin's just paying attention to Jalen Milroe. That's all he's doing, talking to Jalen Milroe.
I mean, I'd still be pretty happy considering the performance that he's putting on. So I would imagine Mike Tomlin, who, even if he's not an offensive guy, would watch Jalen Milroe underthrow wide receivers by about 15 yards and say, yeah, maybe that's a little bit more of a project than we should be taking on at the moment.
Yeah, maybe. I still remember being down there, and we'll talk everything else here in a second, but I still remember being down there, and it was Kenny's year. Kenny was there, and being like, dude, Mike Tomlin is very clearly into the quarterbacks, is paying literally no attention to Kenny Pickett. None whatsoever. It was, the performance that he put on there was magnificent, but even then he gave away what he's looking at. So this year, at least we don't have a guy to target in on. There is no Malik Willis. It is just simply, who are the studs? Who can we find? The Pittsburgh Steelers clearly want defensive line, running back, and wide receiver, and that is a very good thing to be looking at if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's talk. We have 3 quarterback situations, or 3 quarterback headlines that have emerged here, and it's crazy. One of them is Pete Carroll addressing Russell Wilson. We're going to talk about that one first because that is actual news. We're going to dive into it. It is important to talk about. It's good to hear what he said. Then I got 2 absolutely positively crazy possibilities. We're going to leave it at that. And I want your opinion on what one's a little bit crazier. We're going to start with Pete Carroll here, who brought on who was on, what is it, speaking on What the Football, excuse me. Sorry, wanted to get that right. Knew it was associated with the Rich Eisen show. Wanted to make sure that we did everybody good. What the Football was asked very directly about Russell Wilson and the rumors that immediately emerged with everybody saying he is a name to watch, a player to watch for the Las Vegas Raiders. I went on here and said, you know, I said a lot and then ended it with, I wouldn't have these conversations if I didn't hear things, okay? If I didn't get phone calls, if I didn't have conversations that made me think that, well, maybe this has something behind it. Pete Carroll just pretty much put a stamp on it and said, yeah, it's all true. When asked about the situation, he said, quote, "It's so early and we're just in the midst of trying to find the puzzle pieces, not even putting them together yet. So I can't even say free agency hasn't come yet." But then he added this: "I promise you, if you're a real competitor, you're not letting options get away from you." I mean, Pete, all you had to say was, yeah, we'll consider him, because would have saved you a couple of words, would have saved us a couple of minutes typing this out and transcribing, would have did less on social media with the clip. But he pretty much said, yeah, we're going to consider Russell Wilson. At least that's how I took it, is Russell Wilson is on the table. Doesn't mean definitely. A lot of pieces have to get worked out, but why wouldn't we consider Russell Wilson? I mean, do you feel differently?
No, it sounds like something where he could have put it to rest, but he didn't want to put it to rest. I would say what this does is tell me that there's a chance that he goes after him, but it also tells me that there's multiple quarterbacks that he has his eyes on, that he wants to make sure that he knows everybody that will come to Vegas before he says who Vegas wants to go out and get. But it is interesting that he didn't rule it out, because obviously everybody immediately made that connection, and he could have just said, hey, listen, we're going in a different direction. But right now it just sounds like that's one of the directions we could go, but there's only a handful that we might go.
That's exactly. There's only a handful that we might. Obviously, Russell Wilson's an option. He's an option for any team that needs a quarterback. But there are going to be teams. There are going to be insiders. There are going to be coaches. There are going to be Art Rooney's who say our preference is so and so. Pete Carroll said, if I'm a competitor, man, I'm open to whoever's going to make this team the best. Gardner Minshew isn't that guy. Maybe it's Aiden O'Connell. Possibly, very possibly, it's Russell Wilson. I mean, it's a wait and see game, and I'm sure that it comes down to money in the long run. Let me ask you this, and this isn't Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson. This is just everything. Do you think Russ is going to look for money, like a good chunk of money in free agency?
I mean, he can look for it. I'm not sure he's going to find it.
But do you think that's a priority of his?
I don't know. I don't know Russ personally. He's made a lot of money, and his wife makes and will make a lot of money for the remainder of her life.
Yes.
So I'm not sure how much money is a factor. I know he wants to play, and I think that's the biggest thing for him is getting the opportunity to play. And I think secondary would be trying to win a championship. And I'm not sure there's very many teams outside. I don't think there's very many, if any, teams that he can go to and immediately make them a championship contender because those teams already have their quarterbacks. So I think that first and foremost will be a starting opportunity where there's a lot. And I think that trying to go to the team that gives him the best shot will probably be second, with money being third.
Okay. I'm interested to see, because when you hear Russell talk, and it makes complete sense, like that you connected every dot there. Like when you hear Russ talk, it's, I want to play forever. I want to be started in this league. I want to compete for a Super Bowl. But he's said things like long-term deal. Art Rooney made it known that it's a two-way street and you have to negotiate with these guys. It just kind of feels like at some point you're a quarterback and you realize that quarterbacks make a lot of money. No matter how good you are, you make a pretty good amount of money. And I think I'm curious to see if that comes into play. I really am, like, because I think that limits Russ, but I also think he's going to get it. I think the Giants would be stupid enough to throw 2 years, $40 million a year at him. You know, I think the Jets would do something crazy like that. I think the Titans, if they get desperate enough at any point during this process, could say, let's go with Russ over Will and draft Travis Hunter, because that immediately makes us better. I just think that there are names out there. I don't know if Vegas is one of them, but I'm not going to shut down Vegas being one of them. Why wouldn't Mark Davis say, we're going to pay you? We want to try to win a Super Bowl. Mark Davis is a win a Super Bowl head coach or a Super Bowl owner, and he just hired a win a Super Bowl head coach. Why not go get a quarterback that you think could go win a Super Bowl? That'll be Russ. I mean, I'm just curious. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I am curious. All right. I'm going to send this to you. I said that I want your reaction on what's crazier, but I'm going to have you ask me if my what one's crazier, and we'll dive into two absolutely insane quarterback situations that, you know, maybe they happen, maybe they do, but I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we were talking about the Las Vegas Raiders and who they could go after. So too was ESPN's Dan Orlovsky on NFL Live, and when he was talking about who the Raiders could and should go after, he was thinking that it could be somebody not named Russell Wilson. Quote, I think the first call that I would make would be Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams to figure out what Stafford's plans are. Is he going to play? Is he going to retire? Do they want him back? Honestly, if I were the Giants, if I were the Steelers, if I were a lot of teams, that would be my number one call. Try and see kind of what the plan is for Matthew Stafford. How crazy is the idea of the Steelers not retaining one of the two guys that they had, but as Dan Orlovsky opines about, going after former Super Bowl champion Matthew Stafford?
Look, I'll say this. Matthew Stafford is head and shoulders the best option at quarterback the Pittsburgh Steelers could have. He's the only guy of any of the options that in 2025 actually gives you a shot to win a Super Bowl. That both of those things are true. He's also going to come with a massive price tag, plus a contract, plus you don't even know if he wants to still play football. He's mid to late 30s. Like, I don't know if it works out. I know that he is the best quarterback of all the options. He's a potential future Hall of Famer who still plays like a potential future Hall of Famer of the three that are still available. That makes a lot of sense. Do I think there's any chance the Pittsburgh Steelers call the LA Rams and have a serious conversation about him? No, I don't think that there's any chance in hell the Steelers pick up the phone and say, we're really thinking about Russ and Justin, cheap 1-year deals. We're going to figure this out long-term eventually. But is Matt available? Can we talk to Matthew, please? Remember when you were over here in the cold? It sucked, didn't it? Yeah, you should come back. You should come back. No, I don't think that happens. I don't think it's the worst idea, but sometimes when you say things like that, you should acknowledge that it's not really a possibility. The Jets and the Giants or whoever else was on that list make a lot of sense. The Steelers, not happening, pal.
Yeah, at 36 years old. I mean, father time comes for everybody. It's just a matter of when. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers has gotten to 40, and we've seen what happened to him. Russell Wilson, we might have seen father time catch him this year.
Yes.
Right? And lead into 5 straight weeks of losing. Matthew Stafford has avoided it up to this point, but when is that going to come? And if it comes, do you really want to be on the hook for, what is it, $51 million this year and then $53 million next year? No, you don't want to do that. Not to mention the fact that the Steelers, as of this moment, who knows what happens in the draft? Who knows what happens in free agency? This could be a different conversation in June. But as of this moment, they don't have the offense for Matthew Stafford. They don't have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. They don't have one of those guys. I would put Pickens below both of them, even at his best. So,
yeah,
no shade to Pickens. I think Nacua, I think highly of Nacua and Kupp.
Yes.
The Steelers don't have the offense for it. They certainly don't want to be holding the bag if and when Matthew Stafford meets father time and falls off that cliff.
Yeah. Plus, on top of that, George is not a Matthew Stafford receiver. I mean, I get it, Calvin or Johnson, but I don't know, man. Like Megatron is one of his own.
There's one Megatron.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's hard to compare those two together in any sense of the word. It's just not going to happen. Plus, the Steelers have $52 million in cap space, so you'd have to already start there, which would be a rough time.
All right. Well, there's wild quarterback takes, and then there's Mike Florio quarterback takes. In the latest episode of NBC Sports Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio was talking about what Art Rooney had to say earlier this week about the Steelers and bringing back at least one of Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And his response was a little telling and a little interesting. Said, quote, "I think the guy's going to be a backup too. I think that's the reality. They're going to look for a starter elsewhere. They want to keep one of the other two to be the number 2. That's my guess. So is Russell Wilson or Justin Fields just re-signing with Pittsburgh to hold a clipboard?"
I mean, not according to Art Rooney, not according to Mike Tomlin, not according to Russell Wilson. Justin hasn't addressed it. Seems like a lot of that's not going to happen. And then there's Mike Florio, which is just go look up Bill Belichick slams Mike Florio and, you'll have a good time there. No, the answer is no here. And it's like the simplest no of all time. This is actually, it's not even a conversation to be had. It's just how wild this take is. This supposed insight that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go, who are they getting? Who's the option above Justin Fields or Russell Wilson? And what are you signing them to? Like, you're telling me that Justin's getting a backup quarterback money deal, that Russ is taking a backup quarterback money deal, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are just going to go spend big bucks somewhere else to go get who? Aaron Rodgers? Is that who they're putting in front of either one of these guys? Tyrod Taylor? They're bringing Ryan Tannehill back to be this year's Cordero Patterson / Michael Pruitt? Like, what is the thought process here? I just don't think that it's you're going to get Jalen Milroe. You drafting somebody explain it to me. Someone explain to me who the starting quarterback is of the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're signing one of the 4 options on the available market to be a backup for this season. I mean, Kyle Allen's out there. I get it, but I don't think the Steelers are as high on Kyle Allen as the rest of us are. I just don't think that's how why? How did we get here? How did we get here?
Yeah, you covered pretty much everything I was going to say. The first word that came to mind whenever I heard that, I literally let out an audible "who?" Like I felt like an owl. I was like, "Who? Who are they
Yeah.
backing up to? And when is that player coming?" Because as you mentioned, Justin Fields and or Russell Wilson, whoever comes back, would have had to have already signed their contract by the time this other quarterback comes to town. Because
Yep.
neither of them want to be a backup in 2025. Russ sure as hell doesn't. And Justin Fields just did that this season when I think everybody in the world knew that by week 17, he should have been starting over Russell Wilson. He doesn't want to go into the same situation next year. Certainly doesn't want to do that with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the same situation next year. He wants to be a starting quarterback. It's year 5 for him in the NFL. He had that reset. This was his redshirt year. Next year, he wants to play. So, yeah, I agree. The same exact things that I heard there. Like, unless Mike Tomlin beats Brian Callahan so bad in a game of poker in Mobile, Alabama, and Callahan has to just dish out the number 1 overall pick this year, the Steelers aren't going to find somebody else to start ahead of Justin and Russ while one of those two remains in the city of Pittsburgh. It is not feasible. And I understand. There's a reason Mike Florio is where he's at. He's good at his job, but sometimes the takes are just too far out of left field and too far out of the realm of possibility for anybody to take it seriously.
I think at some point during this, we should collect a top 10 wildest Mike Florio takes about the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I think that the list would be awesome. I think if we took an afternoon and sat down, we would have a great time coming up with top 10 wildest Mike Florio Pittsburgh Steelers. How many of those are Mike Tomlin's going to LA and Washington? Yeah, or LA, dude, because his wife does fashion and she wants to be in LA. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Thanks, pal. And he's from Washington 30 years ago, and I have a feeling he's got enough money to make sure that his mom and whoever else is still around can come visit in Pittsburgh. I'm pretty positive that he's got the funds to afford some flights. Yeah, wild times. We're early. It's January 29th. I get it. January is the longest month of the year, and it takes 10 years to get through the first month of a year. But we have a very clear winner for wildest take of 2025. Very clear winner of wildest, maybe worst take of 2025. Worst insight by far, by a mile. I don't think that one's going to get passed off. Shout out. No, for everybody talking about it, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields will not be backup quarterbacks for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And with that said, my agenda's done. Our sheet over here is finished, and it's time for us to finish the show the same way we do every single day. Without any ad reads, I feel like we fly by these things, but, that just means you guys got to ask more questions so that we can keep it going. We're going to dive into all the questions. Make sure you toss them in the chat. We'll get to all of them before we head out of here. With that said, Nick, I'm going to toss it to you. What do we got?
Yeah, let's kick things off with Madeline, who says, "Hey guys, what do you think about Trey Harris III, a wide receiver out of Ole Miss? Also, do you think that Fields has the upper hand right now with the quarterback spot, given everything that has come out in the media lately?"
Yes. Yes. From what I've been told as well, Justin Fields does have the upper hand in Pittsburgh. We'll see what happens. I think at this point, we've talked about everything we talked about. It's just about, is the deal going to get done? And are they going to make sure that he's a starter, or are they going to tell him, hey, Justin, man, this could be an open competition. Okay. We're going to bring back Mason Rudolph. You're going to be the next Mason Rudolph. You're going to be a backup. So if that happens, probably not, but that's not going to happen. Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. I like Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. I do think that the Steelers would be in. Trey Harris is what, 6? He's bigger. I'm pretty positive he's bigger. But I am a fan of him, and there's another Ole Miss wide receiver as well. I think both of them translate well. I would like to see more tape. That's my thing on right now where we stand is I've watched a lot of running backs. I've watched a couple of corners, not really a bunch of them, to be honest with you. And I've watched the big name wide receivers, which is a lot of fun. But it's still early to go through these stuff, and I'm interested to see where the Steelers are interested in so that I could dive into it. Is Trey Harris who I'm thinking of? He's a bigger dude.
Yeah, he's 6'3", 210 pounds.
Yeah, that's what I imagine. Yeah, which, I mean, you want to get a strong, heavy hand wide receiver out of Ole Miss. They tend to work out. So I'd be all about it.
Let's jump all the way down to Miguel Goncalves, who says, with Rooney backing Tomlin 100%, are you worried Tomlin is going to want Russ back? Seems to me with Tomlin, he will choose Russ.
I thought that too. I've had that same worry. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a possibility. But I also think that by the end of it, even Tomlin was sitting there going, yeah, it's got to be Justin. Like, it's got to be Justin. We can't not be Justin. Mike has kind of dropped some hints that it's Justin as well. Again, just from what I'm hearing, like, I understand that if Mike is the guy, he gets to make that call, and that's a wild card. But it just feels like the organization as a whole understands that Justin Fields is the better option, and the bigger risk, or the better reward for probably the same amount of risk. And that's what they're looking for. The Steelers don't look at Russ right now and say that's the difference between us and a Super Bowl. They're looking at both of these guys and saying who has the bigger reward. That's Justin Fields. It makes it the clear and obvious answer. And I think even Mike Tomlin understands that.
Let's jump to Chris, who says, what's happening with the Steelers coaches? Has anyone been fired yet? How is Pat Meyer not fired after the offensive line looked so bad and our picks are busts?
Okay, so don't jump the gun yet. I still expect it to happen. They're in Mobile. When they get back from Mobile, that's when those things will happen. So at the end of this week, that's when I expect all of that to start being taken care of. But for right now, they do it one step at a time. They're in Mobile, Alabama. From there, they will make decisions. There might have already been moves that have been made. We just don't know about them. The Steelers don't always leak that stuff pretty immediately. I mean, it took 2 weeks before we knew Carl Dunbar was even going to be a free agent. So a lot of it will be contracts expiring that they let walk, and then they'll come back from Mobile and they'll make the rest of those moves. I would expect it this weekend, maybe next week.
Chris also says there's no good quarterbacks in this year's draft. You can draft a franchise quarterback, however, in 2026.
There should be options in 2026. The problem is the Steelers aren't going to finish high enough to actually get one. So that's a conversation for next year to say, what can they do to move up? But that's what's going to end up happening, is you're going to have to make a move for a quarterback if Justin doesn't work out. But again, Justin Fields is a lottery ticket. And if it hits, awesome. You got a 26-year-old who is a stud.
Let's go over to Chris's last point here. Says Broderick Jones and Pat Meyer are awful. Changed my mind.
Chris, fantastic day from you. Let me tell you, very appreciated. This is
got
awesome.
Another one out here from Chris too, so we'll go to that next.
That's awesome. I believe that the Steelers do need a new offensive line coach. I also understand the argument about replacing Broderick Jones and seeing what's going on there. But I also think that he's 21 years old, 22 years old, maybe, and you have to give him another year on his natural side. If it doesn't work out there, you move on. But again, the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't, if we're talking the same situation as the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't a Super Bowl team in 2025, and you have a 22-year-old offensive tackle that has a ton of talent, he's just super raw. They have to go hand in hand. You have to give him an opportunity to see if it works out. If it doesn't, he only gets one shot, but he's got to get that shot.
And let's finish off Chris's section of comments here with the definition of insanity is believing Tomlin is capable of fixing this team. Almost 2 decades, and he still hasn't figured out how to build a team.
Chris, man, you are having a tough day, my brother. I'm not gonna sit here and argue any of this. I don't think that there's a better coaching option right this very second than Mike Tomlin, but I think that there were some available 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and Steelers didn't make a move. I thought that by the end of it, Tomlin lost it. I wrote a strong piece the day after the playoff game that said Mike Tomlin has lost the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I stand by it. Nothing has changed in my head. I don't think Mike Tomlin is a Super Bowl winning coach where we stand right now. But that being said, there are a lot of coaches in the NFL that aren't Super Bowl winning coaches, and Mike Tomlin's probably the best of that group, and that's where the Steelers have stuck themselves. Agree with it? No. Anything you could do right this second? Also no.
All right, let's jump down to Cody, who says, if we keep GP and get a wide receiver in free agency, does that mean we don't draft a wide receiver? Couldn't we improve more areas by doing that?
I still think the Steelers draft a wide receiver because 2 reasons. One, there is right now in the Pittsburgh Steelers head, it is not higher than even 50% that George Pickens gets a second contract with them. Even if they keep him this season, I still don't think that they view him as a guy currently that is worth giving the money to. They probably view him as somebody who needs to take a massive step up maturity wise in 2025 to get that second deal. Like, this dude is showing up late to work, showing up late to practice, getting in trouble all the time, showing up late to games. Like, the Steelers are not pleased with the maturity and the reliability of George Pickens. On the other side of this, I agree with you that you could improve more areas, but I also think that you get an opportunity to have a franchise wide receiver and work with him and whoever the wide receiver is, plus Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin and George Pickens. I mean, it's just more weapons for your quarterback and a long-term plan. So I think that either way, the Steelers are going to add somebody there. That's what I expect.
All right, let's jump to Rob Little, who doesn't have a question, more of a statement. And I will say, because it's in all caps, I would go as far as to say it's a declaration. Rob says, please try 4-3 and blitz heavy. We coaching have a great defense, but poor.
I look at it. Nobody disagrees. And I hope Mike Tomlin sees the warts, because that's where we're at here, is we're all well aware that the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's hilarious because I said it to you, but I don't know. I said it to my in-laws last night. I was talking to my brother-in-law and my father-in-law, and they're like, oh, like, what, they're not going to get rid of TA. And I was explaining that TA doesn't run the defense. This is Mike Tomlin's defense, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, man, as long as something changes. I was like, well, the changes are obvious. You know what I mean? We all know what the changes are. Blitzing a little bit, not playing 12 yards off the ball. Probably good starts for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I don't know how to start this next one, because there's one way to pronounce this word that I thought it's been my entire life, and now I'm not so sure because of a certain press conference earlier this week. Let's go to Ricky next. Duval. What are the odds Jacksonville disbands their franchise and just gives Trevor Lawrence to Pittsburgh after this?
I mean, I don't know, but that was awesome. You did a damn good job. That was very impressive. Look at Trevor Lawrence ain't coming to Pittsburgh, but what was your reaction? Honestly, what was your thoughts when that press conference popped up? What was your thoughts on that head coach of the now Jacksonville Jaguars? Yeah.
My first thoughts were, this poor soul. Like, he is never going to live that down. It does not matter even if he goes on to be a very good head coach, he's going to have to win Super Bowls, or at the very least be that type of character the rest of his life. Like, if he commits to the bit and goes full crazy like that clip showed, then he might be able to make it work, but he's never going to live that down otherwise. Like, we heard the biting kneecaps and everything from Dan Campbell, but for 3 years, he's remained that guy. And that's what's endeared him to everybody. If Liam Cohen just has this and then goes back to being like a typical head coach and doesn't really make a lot of moments, then everybody's just going to keep going back to that and saying, did we really think that this guy was going to be able to lead an NFL franchise to success? So no, I feel bad for the guy, because he's never going to have to live that down. He was just trying to have some fun with the Jags media.
If you are a fan, okay, and your new head coach walks up and does that, what you thinking?
I mean, from what I know about Jaguars fans, they very much are protective of Duval.
Oh,
I think a lot of them would look at that and be like, oh, God damn it. Really? So I think a lot of them that got them off on the wrong foot with Cohen.
I 100% agree. I looked at it and just went, damn it, dude. I didn't like this guy to begin with, because all the stuff that was happening. I was like, what is going on? How did you hire him still? And now this, like, yikes. Big yikes. But we'll see what happens. Duval, shout out. Trevor Lawrence ain't coming to the Steelers.
No, unfortunately not.
Unfortunately not.
Let's go to Mike, who says the quarterback is signed, the cornerback is signed, the nose tackle is signed, and T. Higgins is signed. At that point, who do you target in the draft to compete for a Super Bowl?
A defensive lineman, a corner, or a wide receiver. That is my answer. Whoever the best of the three is, that comes to you at 21. That's the answer. You have Justin Fields. You have, I mean, the core. We have to assume, if we're going to be realistic, Dante Jackson, maybe a name like Javon Hargraves, and T. Higgins. Okay, awesome. You would say you didn't get rid of George. Wide receiver room looks good. So maybe you could pass up a wide receiver, but I still think that's very high on the list. Could be a first round pick. Defensive tackle could easily be on the list. Corner, I think you could slide to number 2, maybe number 3, depending on how you feel about Corey Trice, and still be okay. Still have that guy that you could build off of, which isn't terrible. I would still say nothing changes. You're still going with those 3. But if I had to guess at that moment, let's say this is a perfect draft and everything falls the way that it should, the Steelers go wide receiver round 1, defensive tackle round 2, running back round 3. That's what I would guess.
All right. Chris checked back in. So let's go to Chris, who says the draft is here next year, right? Why not trade this year's first round pick for next year's draft picks to get a franchise quarterback? Con can make it happen.
If anybody's going to make it happen, the con artist is going to make it happen. I still don't think that if you traded this year's pick for another first next year, and then you 2 first round picks, that you'd set, unless you're trading with somebody that you believe is going to be in that realm right there, that top 10 pick, I still don't think that you have enough. Like, you need to move up from 21 to 1 is impossible. You can't do it. You literally cannot do it. It took, what was it, the 3 picks to go up from 9 to 1? You just don't have the moves. You don't have the space there. You would have to hope that whoever you traded with sucks and ends up being a top 10 pick. Because if they do end up being a top 10 pick, you can make the move then. But I don't know. And I still don't. I think right now there's 2 franchise quarterbacks, possibly 2 possible franchise quarterbacks in next year's draft. I think there's a possibility there's a couple more, but I just see 2 right now. And that could probably, most likely, is going to be picks 1 and pick 2.
All right, let's go over to Justin Shannon, who says Jones at right tackle gave up the 2nd most sacks. Now he'll be up against the best pass rushers at left tackle. Him switching sides isn't going to help.
I mean, I don't know that to be true. I really don't.
I personally disagree.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't think that the evidence is there to say that. He's struggled at right tackle. He's played left tackle his whole life. Maybe left tackle is it. I don't think people understand how difficult it is to switch sides of the line. It is incredibly difficult. To be a swing tackle, swing guard, swing whatever is incredibly difficult. I don't know if he's going to be more natural on the left side. I mean, he became the 14th pick in the draft by playing the left side. Then they moved him to right, and he struggled. Maybe he's a 3rd round pick as a right tackle and the 14th overall pick as a left. I think that's something we're going to find out.
Yeah, and I always go back to the thing because it happened 2 years ago. Kevin Dotson was ran out of Pittsburgh because he was so bad. He switched sides and he became an all-pro. I'm not saying that's what you're going to get out of Broderick Jones. I'm just saying that is more evidence to say that maybe putting him in his natural position will have a positive impact. And that's why I have belief that putting Jones back at left will at the very least garner more positive results than we've seen from him in years 1 and 2.
I hope, but I agree with you. I agree with you.
Let's jump over to Darian Miller, who says, appreciate all you both do. Says, what appeals the most to you guys about having Justin Fields on the team besides age and less cost?
I honestly don't know if he's going to be less expensive than Russell Wilson, but Darian, I do appreciate you as well. What intrigues me is that this guy's an 11th overall pick that's had 4 offensive coordinators in 4 years. It's had 2, 3 maybe head coaches. I guess at least 3 head coaches because of Mike Tomlin. He had 2 in Chicago. Has never really had a backup quarterback that he could really, truly learn behind. He had Andy Dalton his first season. I mean, come on. It's not the best one that you could come up with. And until this past year, 2 years ago, I guess, he's never had a number one wide receiver. I mean, he came into the league and Darnell Mooney was supposed to be his dude. And then Chase Claypool was supposed to be his dude. And then DJ Moore showed up. Awesome. Definitely helped a little bit. And then he came to Pittsburgh and won 4 games, went 4-2, and should have went 5-2 if the Pittsburgh Steelers defense wasn't bad. I mean, that's what you're looking at. I just think that he's 26 years old. He's an 11th overall pick 5 years ago. You have no idea if this kid's going to turn into something great. And maybe he doesn't, but this is a perfect year to take a chance and say, screw it, maybe he does, because there are no better options. Last year, I understood it, where it was like, okay, we have Russell Wilson. Like, I get that. I totally get that. Russell Wilson has been to 2 Super Bowls. He has won a Super Bowl before. He has done this. He's made 9 Pro Bowls. Like, this is a guy that could have that second emergence and win you a Super Bowl. But this year, there is none of that. There is no option there. So it just makes too much sense to take a shot on a lottery pick, and Justin Fields is your lottery ticket. So I think that's why I'm so intrigued with going with Justin.
All right, we got a 2-parter from John. Let's start with this one. First question, I don't want to be a downer, but with the questions in so many spots on the team, what is yours and Nick's opinion if we're even close to competing with the Chiefs or Bills next year?
Yeah, I don't think the Steelers are close. I don't. I would say the Steelers are a full tier, probably 2 tiers below the Chiefs. The Chiefs are in a tier of their own. You know, let's put them at the top there in the AFC. They stand very strongly alone there. The Bills and the Ravens are in tier 2. I would say the Steelers are tier 3. They're in the Houston Texans, the probably at the end of the season, Cincinnati Bengals, the Chargers, like that playoff team, but you just don't know if they really ever have a shot type of category. That's where I would put them. I don't think that even if Justin Fields, you get a franchise quarterback, changes everything. The Commanders showed that this year, but unless Justin is like an absolute stud next year, I don't think they have a real shot.
Let's go to John's second question here, where he says, I'm taking my girlfriend to her first game next season. What home game do you guys think the Steelers will have the best chance of winning?
If I had to recommend going to a home game, go to Ireland and go see the Packers play. The best chance of winning. Oh, can you pull up the schedule real fast?
Yeah. Do you want to know their home opponents are? Obviously the Ravens, Bengals, and Browns, but then it's
all 3 is you want to go to an AFC North game. They're always fantastic. So that's recommendation 1.
Outside of the AFC North, they will welcome the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, the Minnesota Vikings, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Seattle Seahawks. There's no surefire. I'll say that right now.
I would go to an AFC North game. I mean, unless Shadur Sanders is there, which even if Shadur's there, like that even makes it more exciting. Go see a Cleveland game. Those are always a blast. Baltimore would be my second pick. Cincinnati's fun, but you just never know what's going to happen there. Although there are usually shootouts, so they're enjoyable. Seattle, I think they have a shot over. Indianapolis, I think they have a shot over. There was another team between the Bills and the Vikings.
The Dolphins?
The Dolphins. They have a shot at the Dolphins. But I would go to an AFC North game. Go to one of those 3. They're the best.
Let's go to Madeline, who says, do you think the Steelers would give him $40 million a year? Russell Wilson. No.
Yeah. I highlighted this one, so I knew what we were talking about. No, I don't. I think the Steelers are going to max out at about $25 million this season. That's where I think the max is. And I would expect the quarterback to get about 20. That's what I'm looking at. $20 million a year from the Steelers. I don't think they hit 40.
Let's go to Vibin with the Dogs. We've talked about it a little bit, but Vibin wants to know, do you guys trust Broderick Jones at left tackle? I'm skeptical, but better late than never, right?
Exactly. I don't trust Broderick Jones at left tackle. He hasn't earned my trust at left tackle. He hasn't earned anybody's trust at left tackle, but he is a guy that you heavily invested in, and you have to give him an opportunity. That's just how it works. Like you can't not give your 14th overall pick, a guy who the league views as super raw, but so talented, a shot at his natural position. You just can't. That would be that would be malpractice to the fullest extent because you just didn't even give him an opportunity. I have no trust, but I have a lot of optimism that it could happen and could be really good.
Let's go to Ricky Huggins. Appreciate you for checking in again. Ricky says, when do you see coaching changes begin? Broderick is insanely talented, by the way, and I mostly blame coaching for his poor play at right tackle.
I don't know if I blame coaching. I do think the Steelers need possibly a new offensive line coach, but I don't know if I blame coaching. I think they're, you got to execute at the end of the day. That's what you got to do. And I think that at times the offensive line looked good, but I hear what you're saying. I think that if you had Mike Munchak, it helps. I expect coaching changes to begin after Mobile. So the Steelers are in Mobile, Alabama at the Reese Senior Bowl until Friday, and then they'll come back. I could see it happening over the weekend, definitely next week. That's my expectation.
All right, let's jump over to Mike, who says, do you guys agree with this? Justin Fields' floor is Marcus Mariota, but his ceiling is Josh Allen.
I do agree with that. I do agree with that. I understand that that's a massive gap and that the chances of him being Josh Allen are nowhere near him being Marcus Mariota, but show me how that's not true. Like, show me how the ceiling of Justin Fields isn't Josh Allen, isn't have all the capabilities of Josh Allen. Again, that does not mean he's going to be Josh Allen. It doesn't even give a remote, small indication that I believe that he will be Josh Allen, but I do think his skill set has that potential. And this, just like any quarterback coming out of the draft, the good ones, you say, he could be that guy. He could be that guy. Justin Fields coming out of the draft was this dude could be Josh Allen type of quarterback. So the ceiling is definitely there. Is he going to hit? I have no idea. I'm not even slightly convinced he's gonna, but you got to take a chance to see if he does.
Let's jump to Rob Little, who says, spending my DraftKings daily. Shout out to DraftKings.
Hey.
Just need to know why Benton is a nose tackle. 4-3 would solve this defense.
I 100% agree that I think a 4-3, like yes and no. There's positives and there's negatives. Most of the NFL has converted to that, so I hear what you're saying. When it comes to Keanu Benton, he's got to become a tackle. He's got to move over. He has to. You can't make him a nose tackle for how good he's been. It just doesn't make any sense. If the Steelers go out and draft a defensive tackle that plays defensive tackle and not nose guard, and they keep Keanu Benton in nose guard, again, they've messed up. What are we doing here? Go draft a defensive tackle who can play nose guard, make him play nose guard. Sign a nose guard, make him play nose guard. Keanu Benton should be your true defensive tackle, not your nose guard, or not your nose tackle. Excuse me.
Let's jump to AJ, who really wants to know, do you think it's safe to say and buy a Justin Fields jersey?
No. I mean, I look at it for the explanation here. Like, I want to be the first one and say that what took you so long. Like, I hear that if you're willing to take a shot, take a shot. But if that's the case, week one, Justin Fields comes out throwing 6 touchdowns or whatever. You can't say that. You got to wait. It's got to be a full year in of Justin Fields being like, Pittsburgh rides, or Justin Fields will retire a Pittsburgh Steeler. Then you can start saying, well, what took you so long? That's where it comes into play. So don't get me wrong. It is worth the reward at the end, I believe. I do. I think that, those bragging rights are crazy, but it's a risk. You're going to play a risk there. I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money except for putting it into DraftKings, which bet responsibly. But I kind of like it. I kind of like the idea here.
All right, let's jump down to Unlimited Moonballs, who says,
what's he going to do? What's going to happen when I'm not even going to ask the question. It's going to upset us. What happens? What happens when he's gone?
I think you just gotta, I trust Unlimited Moonballs to come up with another creative name that I get to say or enjoy saying. So I have faith.
I agree.
I have faith in Unlimited Moonballs. What are your sleeper pickups for this offseason?
Oh, this is a good question. Chris Godwin, I would say, is a sleeper pickup. I would say that's definitely a sleeper. In the running back room, oh man, dude, I'd have to pull up a list right now and like really look at these guys. Okay, so I'll toss you some bigger names that might be sleepers. Okay. If the Pittsburgh Steelers get any opportunity to do so, tell me they wouldn't make an offer to Trey Smith. Why wouldn't you? You're going to have to make a massive offer. Who are they paying on offense? Nobody.
That's true.
They have money to spend on offense. I'm just saying, sleeper picks here. Mike Hilton is another one because you're going to need a slot corner. Mike Hilton's a free agent. Pittsburgh loved Mike Hilton. That's one of them, especially to teach Beanie Bishop how to be the guy. I'm trying to think here. I'm really trying to think here. I don't have the list in front of me. Do we have any running backs that could come to mind?
Not on my mind. I mean, we've talked about the running back market at length, and I think that it is pretty much written in the stars that they're going to go Jaylen Warren, then whoever they draft as 1 and 2, and at number 3, I mean, they still have Patterson under contract, right? So I'm not sure there's going to be a sleeper that they're going to bring in. It's maybe somebody they do, but I'm not sure it's anybody that's going to make an impact.
Okay. All right. Here's a couple of names here. These are if they do not get signed. Okay. We'll start at wide receiver. Nick, he's got another name, Westbrook, out of Tennessee. That's one to watch. Yeah.
Wide receiver. I thought you were talking about running back still. Sorry.
No. Hollywood Brown is another one. Loved Hollywood Brown coming out of college. Chris Godwin is one, obviously. Keenan Allen would be a name to watch as well if the Steelers got a little bit desperate at wide receiver. And then I'll give you some running backs as well while we're sitting here. Jeff Wilson would be a name. And, there is no other names here, pal. They are bad. I think that would honestly be it. I think you end it there. I think you end it there. The Steelers go find somebody else. I'll come up with a better list for you. I'll sit down and look at some of this stuff, and I'll get it to you.
All right, let's go over to Caveman, who weighs in on the Justin Fields conversation and says, outside of Josh Allen, what about the fact that people said the same thing about Jalen Hurts? Just wait a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you can't argue that. I will say that Jalen Hurts looked terrible at the beginning, and he looks terrible now. I don't think Justin Fields looks
terrible, but you have to be good to some level to get to a Super Bowl in 2 out of 3 years. I understand the supporting 100%. Cast there is as good as it can get, but the quarterback still runs the ship, especially on offense. So you have to give credit where credit's due. And the Steelers want to be that type of offense, right? Like the Steelers want to be run first. They want to be the Steelers of old.
They do.
A Jalen Hurts level quarterback might be exactly what the doctor ordered for the Steelers and the way they want to win.
I agree. I think Justin Fields has a better arm than Jalen Hurts. I also think he's more athletic. Doesn't mean he's better. Definitely doesn't mean he's better. But also at the same time, what could you imagine Justin Fields in Philadelphia's offense? Sounds a little dangerous. So I agree. I don't disagree with this. I think they say the same thing about Justin Hurts as, should have been Josh Allen. Well, he's been to 2 more Super Bowls than Josh Allen. Has a shot to win one.
All right, let's go down to Real-ish, who says, Noah, Nick, do you ever listen to Chris Sims on his annual draft QB rankings? He tends to be super accurate. He could indicate who the Steelers should really give a shot to.
Yeah, I do check them out most years. He definitely would give some insight. Sometimes they're kind of wild, but also at the same time, I'm kind of wild at times. I went on a Jalen Milroe conspiracy rant yesterday, and then 24 hours later, we were shut down about it. So, it happens to the best of us. I do think that the Steelers have more than one option, but I think those options are 4 before you start getting crazy. And one of them, unfortunately, is Aaron Rodgers. And I don't think that's going to happen. So I just think that the best option are the ones that are on the team, and the even better option is Justin Fields, who on ESPN's rankings today, did you see that? Sat almost, I think it was 20 spots ahead of Russell Wilson and Najee Harris.
That makes it interesting. I mean, that's position.
That list was, if you got a second, go look at that list. It is, it's suspect. It is very suspect.
All right, let's go over to Logan. Only got a few more here. Let's start with Logan, who says, where is Minkah best utilized on our defense? I've heard lots of contradictions lately about whether to use him closer to the line of scrimmage or back deep. We've seen his production waver. What unlocks him in 2025?
I have no idea. I have no idea. That's the real honest to God answer is I have no idea, because his first year he was unbelievable playing like the deep on Minkah. I get to control the defense and kind of not really having any idea what he's doing, but just going out there and being by the ball. That is what Minkah was good at. And then teams stopped targeting him. So the Pittsburgh Steelers started moving him up and saying you could play in the box. And then the Minkah splash play disappeared and he was getting beat every once in a while. So they said, okay, that was on us. We moved him around too much. You got to move him back. He's best at free safety when he could play Minkah ball. All right. Well, last year he did almost nothing, one interception away from nothing, but he did get an interception and got beat a bunch, but also made some plays up at the line of scrimmage that you said maybe you should put him back up there. Maybe he just needed time to adjust. I honestly have no idea where to put Minkah Fitzpatrick. What I will say is this. I think it should be as easy as putting him deep and saying you will never, ever beat Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's what it should be. It is not. But if I was going to unlock him, I think the best way to do that is to just say, you are our Kyle Hamilton. You are our true safety. You'll move up every once in a while, but you're not playing nickel. You're not playing any of that. You're just playing safety. And don't ever get beat. And he should never get beat. I think it's on Minkah more than it is on where he is.
All right, let's go to Justin. Appreciate you. Says late round pick for Desmond Watson from Florida, 6'5", 449 pounds.
Whoa, dude! Could we pull a picture of this guy up? Because is that allowed to happen? That is absolutely. I want to see what this Desmond Watson, 6'5", 450, 450 pounds, dude. That's a massive human being. Darnell Washington is 6'9", 3 something. Wow. That is a big boy right there. I mean, I'm all about it. You put that in the middle of the Steelers defensive line. I am a fan. I am buying a jersey. I think we're giving away a jersey. I think that's what happens. Desmond Watson ends up on the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line in 2025. He's got to obviously make the team because that's how you get a jersey. We're giving it away. And Justin, you might get a complimentary one just for letting us know.
All right, and let's finish it off with Wall Destroy, who says, catching the live show today, shout out from Brazil.
Hey.
Says, do you guys think it's possible that our wide receiver room in 2025 has both Higgins, Christian Kirk, and Emeka Egbuka?
I do, actually. I think that is a possibility. I would not rule it out. I don't think it's the most likely outcome, but I sure don't think that it's very low on the list. I would say T. Higgins, George Pickens, Emeka Egbuka is my top possibility. And if we're going like big outcomes here, and maybe 2, maybe 3 on that list is Christian Kirk replacing George Pickens. I do think that's a possibility. I think it works. I think it reshapes the line. I do obviously think that George Pickens is better than Christian Kirk, but depends on what you get for him. I think Emeka Egbuka is a name you go after in the first round if he's there, no matter what you're doing. So I would say that's a possibility for sure.
All right, we have no more questions, but I do want to give a quick shout out to Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker Patrick Queen. He is heading to the Pro Bowl, replacing Ravens linebacker Roquan Smith. So it looks like their travel plans continue to be intermingled.
Oh, that is hilarious, actually. I wonder if PQ went to Cancun, sent the jet back, said, you go next. I'm going to go to the Pro Bowl. We'll have a good time this weekend. That's hilarious. Shout out to Patrick Queen, man. This might be, and this is no jab, dude. This is no jab. But this might be the most Pittsburgh Steelers to make a Pro Bowl as alternatives I've ever seen. It's just Pittsburgh Steelers are going to end up with 7 Pro Bowlers, 6 of them TJ backed out, and really should have had, I mean, if you asked an average person, it's 3, but they ended up with 4. They're going to now walk in there with 6. That's shout out Pittsburgh Steelers. Shout out PQ, man. Well deserved. Good guy. I'm a big fan of PQ as a human being. So shout out.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.